Hi there, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Moving on to the NFC West today as we continue to plough on reviewing the first wave of free agency for every team. This episode will be focusing on the Arizona Cardinals. Now, last season was, of course, a bit of a disappointment, to say the least, having made the NFC Championship game the previous year and having been a well-rounded, dominant-looking team. The offense struggled, suffered some injuries on the offensive line, losing Evan Mathis, Jared Veldheer really hurt. Carson Palmer struggled early on in the season, really recovered and played strongly towards the end of the year, but by then it was too little too late. Michael Floyd was cut, having performed poorly all season after an absurd situation there. John Brown dealt with injuries. The only real positive on offense was the continued emergence of David Johnson, who's clearly one of the top all-round running backs in the league. He was fantastic, to say the least. Defensively, underperformed as well. They added Chandler Jones in a trade with the Patriots. That move worked out. That went well. Him and Golden were a good tandem. But outside of that, the secondary struggled. Whoever was opposite Patrick Peterson was bullied. Marcus Peters, forget who it was, but he got torched mercilessly, and Tyrann Mathieu was unable to recapture the form coming off quite a serious injury. The form that had him in the running for the Defensive Player of the Year race the season prior had some losses on that side of the ball, so it'll be interesting to see if this team can recover. It feels to me like they're still going to be in a Super Bowl must-win now window mode, with Larry Fitzgerald and Carson Palmer mulling retirement this past off-season. This may well be their last go-round. Will this team have enough talent next season? They're certainly worse than they were on paper at this point last off-season. So the primary team needs I had for the Cardinals going into free agency were cornerback Marcus Cooper. That was the corner whose name I couldn't forget. Yeah, he was poor. Patrick Peterson's a stud, one of the top corners in the game. They need someone opposite him. One corner is not enough. The other players did not perform well enough last season. Wide receiver, Larry Fitzgerald has been one of the all-time greats. This season may be his last. He's not, of course, at this stage in his career, he's not quite the player he once was, but still a very, very productive possession receiver. And John Brown's a fine player if he can stay healthy. I think he's a good contributor, but they need to be looking toward the future at the position, and they really could do with another weapon in the receiving game for this season. If they bring a rookie in, I don't know how much they might be able to contribute. And the other position I had was defensive line. Now I think this is even more relevant now. I really did believe that Calais Campbell was going to return to Arizona sort of for one more run. Been there a long time. He's known as one of the leaders in the locker room, sort of heart and soul of the defense type of players. So even had he remained, I still felt that was a position of need. Outside of him, they didn't really have too much talent at that spot. It's definitely the case now. That remains a big need going into free agency. So in terms of the additions, not a huge amount, a fair few re-signings. The big one being Chandler Jones, who was initially franchised as promised by Bruce Arians. He's now re-signed to a long-term deal, 5 years, $83 million, $53 million guaranteed. Very big contract, but he performed very well last year, was one of the top edge rushers in the league, plays the run really well. Before last season, I'd have always said a better run stuffer than pass rusher. This year he performed well in both regards. Him and Marcus Golden teamed up to be a formidable tandem. It's a position the team had not had anything at for a number of years. They finally look to have got it addressed. They've locked him up long term. It's an expensive contract, but to be honest, these kind of players aren't often available in free agency, and of course he didn't hit it. So considering his age and his productivity last season, it's a bit of a risk. I think he's been a bit lethargic at times in it when he was with New England, but that may have been a function of his role in this scheme. I'm not sure, but they had to get it done. The money's a bit rich, but it's a good move. I really like the player, and I think this one will work out for them. Going back to one of my ongoing themes for this offseason, the tight end contract situation. They re-signed Jermaine Gresham to a 4-year, $28 million deal. Now, for this one, it's particularly easy for me to be critical of this one, because I can just compare it very simply to what the Packers did. They went and got Martellus Bennett, who is a superior player in both the receiving and the run game, and they paid about the same amount. It's just 1 year difference. So 3 years, $21 million for Bennett, 4 years, $28 million for Jermaine Gresham. I don't understand what's with this overpaying. Gresham is not a bad player by any means, but he's not a threat. I don't know why he's being paid this much. As I've said before, apparently this is a very deep tight end group. There's a lot of the guys available in free agency. I'm not sure why they overpaid. Normally, I'm a big fan of retaining and keeping players, that you've had within the scheme. You know how they fit within the locker room. You know how they work out, and all that good stuff. But it's an overpay. Have to be critical of this move. Don't particularly understand it, and I think they've been quite savvy in the last few years. This was a bit of a strange one. Bringing back Carlos Dansby. Do have inside linebackers a need for them at this moment in time. How much he's got left. He's performed very well in the twilight of his career. I think that's sort of gone somewhat unnoticed, is his sort of tour around teams for the last few years. But he's been a solid performer. If he can bring that back for another year, I don't know. Don't have the contract info there. It could be a solid move. It at least gives them some depth and an experienced player at the position, so that may be a reasonable move. They bought Antoine Perfeira, very similar situation. He's been a solid player for a long time. How much he's got left in the tank, I don't know. Again, need the contract info before I can give a bit more there. If he can run, he can play. Very experienced, seen it all on the field, and has been a very good player at points in his career. So it'll be interesting to see how much he offers. They bought back running back Andre Ellington. Hasn't looked like the same player. Sort of burst on the scene at one point with the Cardinals and looked like he was going to be a really good player. He's had some injuries since then. Still fine, I think. Good backup running back, can play every down, offers you something in the receiving game. Especially when you've got David Johnson as your primary back, you can sort of alternate the two of them, and there's no sort of drop off. You don't really have to change the playbook. You can still keep him in for the passing downs. Keeps that offense nice and versatile in terms of what they can do from the backfield. So that's a fine re-signing. And they signed a kicker. It's a kicker. No disrespect to kickers. Not a huge amount to talk about. It's Phil Dawson. He's a solid, reliable kicker. May spell the end of Cantanzaro or whatever it was, who really missed some brutal kicks last season. I mean, they could have beat the Patriots in week 1. People forget. And there was the Seahawks game. I mean, they could have made the playoffs if they just made a few more kicks. So yeah, when that happens, as a kicker, expect to lose your job. In terms of losses, this has been pretty brutal on the Cardinals defense. Tony Jefferson played very, very well for them last year. I suspect, the Cardinals aren't in a great cap situation at this point in time, so probably couldn't afford to re-sign him. He went to the Ravens. It's quite a big loss. He had the one season, but he was really, really good for that one season, so I think that's a loss that will hurt the team. It'll be interesting to see. They lost DJ Swearinger as well, who also came in, played pretty well at some points. That's not a huge loss, but considering they've lost Jefferson, now they've got Perfeira in. They really need to go get someone else at this point, you'd think, to play alongside Tyrann Mathieu. Maybe Perfeira can play a full season, we'll see. Calais Campbell, massive loss. I thoroughly expected him to return, as I said earlier, being the heart and soul of that defense for a long time. One of my favourite players in the league. Rose to prominence recently, but he's had a great career. He's been pretty damn good for this team since day one, and he's the kind of player you just, unless they get very lucky in the draft, he's irreplaceable. Gives you great presence in the run game, very hard to get off the ball, gives you some pass rush from that position. When you've got that combination, that's not easy to find. I mean, really, at that position, he's been the best player in the league in the last several years outside of JJ Watt. So that's a big loss. It was always going to be hard if he decided. It appears to me, because I hear the Broncos were in the running for him, that he's gone, for the payday, which is, fair enough, more power to him, with the Jags, because they've given him a ludicrous contract for someone of his age. So Cardinals weren't going to be able to compete with that kind of money. It's unfortunate for them. Feel for their fans. I'm sure he will be missed. And as I say, he's not someone that you can replace. He also lost tight end Daniel Fells. He was given a silly contract by someone else, which the Cardinals then compiled by giving a silly contract to Jermaine Gresham. And guard Earl Watford's, he's just a backup kind of player. No big deal there. They've still got 2 players that are out there unsigned. Kevin Minter, he's underperformed at this point in his career. I thought he was going to be a really good player coming out of college. I think he fits their scheme well. He should have really been a replacement for sort of Darryl Washington, who washed out of the league due to being, a bit of a bonehead. That was disappointing. He was a really, really good player. Alex Okafor, the pass rush from Texas, he's not really shown too much. And, Marcus Golden clearly overtook him in the pecking order last season. So I don't know whether either one of those will return. I could understand them bringing back Minter because of the need at the position. Possibly Okafor as well, just for another rotational guy. But their starters there do look set in stone. Going into next season, the Cardinals, I think, may be tougher. It seems like the organisation's still got high expectations. They really need to attack some key issues in the draft. As I think the defensive line, especially with the departure of Calais Campbell, is the biggest one. There's nose tackles out there, as I've said on many occasions. They're still there. Dontari Poe's not signed yet. Jonathan Hankins isn't signed yet. Either one of them would look good as a nose tackle in this defense. They could also go get some ends. They need to attack this position in the draft. I think they need multiple bodies along the defensive front. They need some inside backer help. Dion Buchanan's felt like been an interesting player there. He's actually performed admirably in the role that they've given him, but a traditional inside linebacker with some speed, coverage ability would be great. Another corner, and on offense, just some depth and another weapon. So I would expect them to be defense heavy in the draft, possibly look for the heir apparent to Carson Palmer, although I'm not sure this is necessarily the draft to do it. The Cardinals, my expectations aren't so high for them this year, I have to say. They may be lucky to make the playoffs next season, but who knows, maybe the offense will bounce back and carry this team. But what do you guys think? Your opinion on the Cardinals going into next season? Do you think their Super Bowl window has firmly shut on them at this point? Or will this one last go-round possibly have a happy ending for Larry Fitzgerald and Carson Palmer? Fitzgerald in particular, who definitely deserves a Super Bowl for the career that he has had. What do you think of the moves Bruce Arians and Steve Keem have made? Have they been wise this off-season? Any lamentations about Calais Campbell leaving from you Cardinals fans? Let me know. I'll do my best to get back to all of you. Any suggestions for future shows? Let me know. I'll be more than happy to have a look and let you know if I'd be more than happy to do them. As always, like, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, check out the Patreon, all that good stuff. I'll do my best to get back to any comments that are made. Thank you very much for your time. Been a pleasure. I'll have the rest of the NFC West up shortly. And as always, go Bucks.